On August 20th, 1672, one of the most shocking moments in Dutch political history took place. Actually, it's one of the most shocking moments in world political history. The man who was perhaps the most important political figure in the Dutch Republic was murdered by a mob of Dutch citizens and then eaten. The events that led up to this were some of the most significant in the history of the Netherlands. Learn more about Johan de Witt and his unlikely gastronomical demise on this episode of Everything Everywhere Daily. This episode is sponsored by Airlo. I have a true story that I want to share with you. Several years ago, I took a flight from South Africa to Mozambique. When I landed in Mozambique, I instinctively turned on my phone. But I forgot that I didn't have a roaming plan for Mozambique. And before I turned off my phone, less than 5 minutes later, I had accrued $500 of international roaming data charges. International roaming can be that expensive. And that is where Airlo comes in. If you plan on traveling anywhere outside of your home country, you need to have a SIM card to avoid ridiculous roaming charges. Airlo offers eSIMs, which eliminate the need for those tiny little chips that you have to put in your phone, which can get easily lost. And it also means that you can sign up from anywhere. Airlo has plans for over 200 individual countries and regions, as well as global plans. And Airlo has been used by over 10 million people worldwide. Install Airlo today, AIRALO, so you can stay connected wherever you travel. And use my code EED to get $3 off your first eSIM. This episode is sponsored by NerdWallet.
Nerds!
When it comes to general knowledge and history, you know I've got you covered. But who do you turn to when you need smart financial decisions? If your answer is NerdWallet, then you're absolutely right. And if it's not, let me change your mind. The nerds at NerdWallet have spent thousands of hours researching and reviewing over 1,300 financial products. And they have the tools you need to make smarter financial decisions. Looking for a credit card? Go beyond the basic comparisons, filter for features that matter to you, and read in-depth reviews. Ready to choose a high-yield savings account? Get access to exclusive deals and compare rates, bonuses, and more. House hunting? View today's top mortgage rates for your home sweet home. Make the Nerds your go-to resource for smart financial decisions. Head to nerdwallet.com/learn more. NerdWallet. Finance smarter. Disclosure, NerdWallet Compare Incorporated, NMLS 1617539. Before I get to the main course of this episode, I need to start with some appetizers. The murder of Johan de Witt was the accumulation of several large-scale political trends that the Netherlands experienced in the 17th century. It did not happen randomly, and it didn't take place in a vacuum. In the 17th century, the Netherlands was a republic, the largest and only major republic in Europe at that time. Known as the United Provinces of the Netherlands, it was established in the 16th century when 7 provinces controlled by Spain rebelled against Spanish rule and united to form a republic. One of the leaders of the Dutch rebellion was William the Silent, or as he is better known in the Netherlands, William of Orange. He was a member of the House of Nassau, was the Prince of Orange, and founded the House of Nassau-Orange. He's not to be confused with a future William of Orange that I'll get to in a bit, who later became King William III of England. I mention this just to establish that the House of Nassau-Orange was a royal house that nonetheless played a pivotal role in the creation of the Dutch Republic, and it's often just referred to as the House of Orange. The main character in this story is Johan de Witt. He was born on September 24th, 1625, in the city of Dordrecht in the Dutch Republic. He was born into a very influential family. His father was the mayor of the city of Dordrecht. He was a high-ranking member of the Dutch States Party, which was the Republican Party that opposed the Orangists, who supported the House of Orange. Many people in his immediate family had achieved success. His older brother Cornelius was a notable politician and naval commander, and his uncle Andres served as the Grand Pensionary of the Dutch Republic. From the 16th to the 18th centuries, the Grand Pensionary of the Dutch Republic was the most influential governmental position within the Dutch States General, particularly in the province of Holland. Serving essentially as a prime minister, although often referred to as a chief minister, the Grand Pensionary was responsible for implementing decisions of the States General and the provincial states of Holland, coordinating foreign policy and finance, and advising on legal matters. De Witt grew up in what would be considered the heyday of the Dutch Republic. The country went through tulip mania when he was in his teens, but otherwise was growing wealthy through its vast trading network. He had a privileged life, with many intellectuals of his era visiting his home to meet with his father. De Witt was exceptionally bright, studying at the University of Leiden and later broadening his education by traveling extensively through France, Italy, and England. He studied law, mathematics, and economics, which allowed him to bring a scientific approach to governance later on. His political career began in 1650 at the age of 25. He was appointed to the government of the County of Holland and then as pensioner to the city of Dordrecht. His big break occurred in 1653, when at the age of just 28, he was elected Grand Pensionary of the Republic of the Netherlands. Politically, De Witt followed in his father's footsteps and was a member of the States Party and was a staunch anti-Orangist. De Witt's policies were centered around strengthening the economic and naval power of the Netherlands. He supported extensive trade networks overseas and implemented reforms in finance and taxation. He also worked on the True Freedom policy, which sought to diminish the power of the House of Orange by stipulating that the position of the stadtholder, a quasi-monarchical role in the Dutch government, should be abolished in Holland and other provinces. During his tenure as Grand Pensionary, the First Anglo-Dutch War was fought from 1652 to 1654, and the Second Anglo-Dutch War from 1665 to 1667. He proved to be deft at foreign and economic policy, navigating the Netherlands through both wars. By all accounts, De Witt did his job well. He was appointed to the position 3 times, in 1658, 1663, and 1668, and he was largely responsible for the policies during the Dutch Golden Age. So, things were going great. De Witt was the leader of one of the most prosperous and powerful countries in the world. At this point, I've probably whet your appetite, and you are now hungry to know exactly what went wrong. It all had to do with the year 1672. The Dutch have a name for that year. They call it the Rampjaar, which translates to disaster year. The success of the Netherlands incited jealousy and resentment among other European powers. Led by King Louis XIV, France sought territorial expansion and was eager to curtail the economic and political power of the Dutch. Louis XIV launched a surprise invasion from the south. Under King Charles II, England joined France against the Dutch, motivated by commercial rivalries and previous conflicts such as the Anglo-Dutch Wars. They were attacking the Netherlands by sea. Finally, the German bishops of Munster and Cologne also saw an opportunity to gain territory and assert power, and they attacked the Netherlands from the east. The Dutch were initially overwhelmed by the simultaneous invasions. Their poorly maintained army struggled to defend against the well-coordinated attacks, leading to rapid advances by the invaders. Major cities in the eastern and southern parts of the Republic fell quickly. The political repercussions from this were immediate and severe. The Dutch population panicked. A saying was created about that year, which in English says, "The people were irrational, the government helpless, and the country beyond salvation." Almost immediately, Johan de Witt, the Grand Pensioner for the Republic, was used as a scapegoat for the country's problems. One of his biggest criticisms is that he invested too much in the Dutch Navy, but then ignored the Dutch army. So while the Dutch were very powerful at sea, this left them vulnerable on the ground. The Orangist faction, which again supported a more monarchical form of government under the House of Orange, capitalized on this crisis, leading to a surge in support for Prince William III of Orange. Prince William was seen as a strong military leader, which is what the country needed at the time. Despite the country's problems, de Witt remained strongly anti-Orangist, even though popular support in the country had shifted. The sentiment against de Witt moved quickly and violently. There were many public protests against him all over the country. On June 21st, de Witt was seriously injured by a knife-wielding attacker. And eventually, on August 4th, de Witt resigned from the position of Grand Pensioner. However, the resignation of Johan de Witt wasn't enough for his political opponents. Cornelius de Witt, Johan's older brother had been implicated in an alleged plot to assassinate William III of Orange, who by that point had been appointed stadtholder. Cornelius was arrested and tortured, but found not guilty. However, he was banned from public office and sentenced to exile. The accusation itself inflamed public sentiment against the de Witt brothers, who already were unpopular amongst the Orangists. On August 20th, after visiting his brother Cornelius in prison in The Hague, which was right next to his house, Johan de Witt and his brother were caught up in a violent upheaval orchestrated by their political enemies. Johan was actually going to prison to escort Cornelius to his exile out of the Netherlands. This mob was not merely a spontaneous gathering, but it was partly incited by Orangist leaders who sought to capitalize on the widespread panic and discontent caused by all of the military defeats. The French writer Alexandre Dumas wrote about the mob that assembled to attack the de Witt brothers in his book The Black Tulip. He said, quote, "Every one of the miscreants emboldened by Johan's fall wanted to fire his gun at him, or to strike him with blows of the sledgehammer, or stab him with a knife or sword. Everyone wanted to draw a drop of blood from the fallen hero and tear off a shred from his garments." End quote. There are varying accounts of what happened next. I've read many different versions of the story. In some reports, the brothers were shot and then lynched. And we're talking about a murderous mob of people, so meticulous record keeping wasn't a big concern at the time. However, the most common story is that the brothers were literally torn apart and killed by the crowd. However they met their fate, there seems to be agreement on what happened next. As Dumas again writes, quote, "After having mangled and torn and completely stripped the two brothers, the mob dragged their naked and bloody bodies to an extemporized gibbet, where the amateur executioners hung them up by the feet. Then came the most dastardly scoundrels of all, who, not having dared to strike the living flesh, cut the dead in pieces, and then went about the town selling small slices of the bodies of Johan and Cornelius at 10 sous apiece." End quote. Some of the members of the mob took their murderous frenzy to the next level. They reportedly cut the liver out of Johan de Witt, cooked it, and ate it. Another man supposedly ate one of his eyeballs. I should note that this behavior, while extreme, wasn't as out of the ordinary as you would think for that period of time. When public executions took place, it was not uncommon for spectators to take home a souvenir, which could be anything from a tooth to a finger. The murder of Johan de Witt, even though he had already resigned beforehand, had wide-ranging ramifications for the Netherlands. William III of Orange had been appointed stadtholder on July 4th, a position which had been vacant for over 20 years, most of the time while Johan de Witt was in power. It's widely suspected, but has never been proven, that William was the one who orchestrated the attack on de Witt. While his involvement has never been proven, what's undeniable is that none of the leaders of the mob were ever punished, and that he ordered a military unit out of The Hague on that day that could have prevented the attack. The murder of Johan de Witt remains one of the most brutal and bizarre episodes in Dutch history. While there have been cases throughout history of mobs attacking and killing politicians, it's one of the only times that such behavior has led to cannibalism. The executive producer of Everything Everywhere Daily is Charles Daniel. The associate producers are Benji Long and Cameron Kieffer. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports the show over on Patreon, including the show's producers. Your support helps me put out a show every single day. And also, Patreon is currently the only place where Everything Everywhere Daily merchandise is available to the top tier of supporters. If you'd like to talk to other listeners of the show and members of the Completionist Club, you can join the Everything Everywhere Daily Facebook group or Discord server. Links to everything are in the show notes.